All right, so welcome back. So I tried and failed to sleep. So instead of making a video about sampling and about quantizing and all the stuff that I promised, I'm not mentally there right now, but I figured I would do a more comprehensive introduction and provide a little bit of context. I'm going to divide the video into two parts. Part one is who the hell am I and why the hell should you care? And I will say, I honestly don't really advise taking any of my advice except in specific instances, because I'm only good at doing very specific things, and I feel like a lot of my production techniques would not work for a lot of the things that people do. With that out of the way, let's see. So I started playing drums when I was 8 years old. I obviously wasn't very good. Gave up on them. Started again when I was 13, I think. Went through a ton of metal bands playing drums, but it wasn't until I was like 19 or 20 that I decided that I wanted to not just hit things with sticks. So I started learning piano and music theory. 2011 is when I started the design abstract. Back then it was just called design with a dot. The reason this is relevant is because I could not find musicians who wanted to play what I did, so I made all of my music electronically, and I mean everything. I sampled guitars, I sampled everything. My first release, there was one line of spoken dialogue that was real. Everything else was sampled. Drums, guitars, amps, bass, I don't even think there was bass, everything. So that sort of laid the framework for how I approached music. It's different than a lot of people. Sure, I played in bands, but as far as being a songwriter and being the one in charge of the melody and the structure, I learned it all electronically. I think that's where a lot of contention seems to spring from a lot of people. Since then, as per the last video, I've gone on to produce a lot of albums and be in a lot of bands, and obviously I've got a lot better, and I've met many people, and I now have the ability to actually record real instruments when I want to, but the basis of the design abstract has remained very electronic focused, very sample driven. We write music that cannot realistically be played live. If you wanted a one-to-one recreation of the music, you would need 300 freaking musicians. It would look like a Dimmu Borgir concert, which is kind of the goal. That's kind of important to note, because the goal of the design abstract was that I treated all instruments equally. It was a blend of metal and orchestral classical influences, but I didn't give particular priority to one or the other. The instruments that I chose to be real instead of sampled later on were simply the ones that sounded shitty when you sample them, which is guitars, bass here and there. Obviously you can't sample vocals realistically. Just about everything else you can sort of get away with. Sampled brass is iffy, but like you can make it work in the context that we do. It's harder when it's soloed, but most things you just can get away with sampling. It's not that hard, and it's also not that big of a deal. So that's the context that I'm coming into music with, and I know it's contrary to a lot of people who grew up playing shows and playing in bands and playing in front of people, and if you wrote a riff, you sat down with your guitar and you wrote a riff, and I do that too, but like, you know, the piano parts in the music, that's not me sitting down at a piano, that's me programming a MIDI grid, as you will see as I get into videos like that. Part 2 is channel structure, how I'm going to organize the content that I make. The names will be subject to change, but I have so far 3 ideas. The first one is core components, the joke being that I make poser fake shit, not true music, but it's just going to be like simple explanations of core concepts, basic things. I'm going to explain what a DAW is. I'm going to explain how I go about programming drums. Everything I talk about isn't going to be the definitive way to do it, it's just the way that I do it. If you like the sound of the stuff that I make, then cool. If you don't follow my advice. You probably won't like the end result. Next one will be designing the abstract. Get it? Where I dive into specifically the techniques that we use to create the sounds of the design abstract. There's a lot of stuff we do in that band that just doesn't carry over to other projects whatsoever. It's a weird band, and I feel like that's going to be the most fun. I have a song analysis planned of Deus Est Machina, where I'm going to go over exactly what the hell that song is, because honestly I don't even think that people in the band know what that song is. As well as a more in-depth look at how I do the sampling that I do. The third one is still to be named. It's going to be more in the format of vlogs. It's more just going to be me ranting and losing my mind about stuff. That'll be the fun one. I might add components as I think of it, but I have ideas for these 3 so far, so that's what I'm sticking with. The goal of this channel in general is sort of a mix between being instructional, but not that instructional. I'm not going to go super basic, and just kind of shedding a light on the processes that Design Abstract uses, as I've said before, behind the scenes stuff, as well as an outlet for me to rant about stuff. Yeah. So, if that all sounds good to you, then, you know, you can subscribe or whatever. It don't really matter to me. I'm gonna try to churn out these videos whenever I have free time, like now. I have to be up in an hour for a thing, and I knew I wasn't going to sleep, so I figured I would film and edit this. Yeah.